And we're live. Okay, here we go. All right, so we're going to start off with tonight's class with talking about keeping kosher outside of the home. I just realized as I went through this whole thing, I forgot to put a section here about grocery stores. That's because I actually had, if look at the original syllabus sent out like forever ago, going to the grocery store was actually a separate, it's actually a separate class altogether. So that was that's why it's not on this syllabus. But if anybody has grocery store questions, we can deal with that afterwards. Okay. So let's just go ahead and get started with the keeping kosher outside of the home. So we talked about last time was about keeping kosher in general, what all the different laws are about keeping kosher that are from the Torah, that are rabbinic in nature. And then there was we talked about what you had to do to keep kosher in your house. And you have in your house obviously you have the most control over the utensils you use and the products that you use. So that makes it fairly simple. But when you're outside of the house, you need to have all that information handy somewhat, which is what is considered kosher outside of the house. When I don't have all the information handy, what can I rely on? So obviously the most easy one is kosher restaurants. Kosher restaurant, you should assume, should have the same standards as your home, where you can go into a restaurant and feel like, hey, I would do these same things in my home. They'd have separate utensils for meat and dairy. So if it's a dairy restaurant, they're not going to be putting meat there, so on and so forth. And you could rely on that type of stuff. So the first thing we're going to talk about is in kosher restaurants is acceptable kosher supervision. So you should be able to go into a place that is reliable and feel comfortable eating there. Okay, so the first thing I wrote down over here is a dairy restaurant needs Shomer Shabbos worker. Basically, the concern is you have to have somebody in the place who themselves is identifiably knowledgeable. Not that they don't have to know the intricacies of everything. They have to be relatively knowledgeable about. Can you guys just go like in the other room, please, Esther? Okay. So you need to have somebody in the facility there who knows basically like what a kosher symbol looks like, and can also turn on the fires and things like that to prevent Bishul Akum. And we're not going to talk about that too much. Just know that there needs to be something called Bishul Yisrael in restaurants where a Jewish person is involved in cooking. For Ashkenazi practice, that simply means turning the fires on, turning the ovens on. For Sephardic practice is actually much more stringent. They have to actually be involved in the cooking. I have never seen a kitchen of in America of a Sephardic supervision for a restaurant. I do know that Rabbi Ovadia Yosef is lenient when it comes to Sephardim for relying on Ashkenazi practice for caterers and restaurants and so forth. So. I can't help you right now. I am doing something else. When I'm done, I will come and help you. In the meantime, do something else, and I will come and help you afterwards. Okay. Okay. So that's dairy restaurant. So that's when you find a place that offers acceptable kosher supervision, that should be there. So it has less to do with what the kosher supervisors are, and we can talk about some other time about what exactly good kosher restaurants are. For the most part, that is a traveling issue. For example, if you're like around here in Washington D.C., as of today, if you go to any establishment marked kosher under the VOD of Washington or the Star K, you're fine. So anywhere in Maryland, it's pretty much okay. Go to a place like New Jersey, New York, you have all these other places. You have this rabbi that. You have this series of letters, that series of letters, this symbol, that symbol. You get much more confusing as you get outside of the Washington area. That's for that. We'll talk about that more in a little bit. So for a meat restaurant, you need a full-time mashgiach. Full-time mashgiach means that they are trained to do supervision. Means that they are familiar with what is considered an acceptable meat product, what is considered acceptable fish products, how to recognize kosher fish. Remember we talked about last week that they have to have fins and scales. They know how to recognize kosher scales. They've been trained in that. They know how to wash and check certain vegetables. They're familiar with lots of responsibilities, and there's a lot of policies that they have to enforce from the kosher supervisor. So they've actually been trained. So you need to have somebody who's there and full time is also important, because a meat restaurant cannot function correctly without a full-time mashgiach. There is a misconception that you can have a meat restaurant that doesn't have a full-time mashgiach. This is not correct. There are halachic problems with it. One such problem is what's called basar shenis alim min ayin, meat that has no longer been in the possession of Jewish people, and so therefore you cannot, if you do not have somebody there returning in and out, or there constantly on the premises, you can have lots of issues. You also need to make sure that they're checking the wine to make sure that the wine is mevushal, as opposed to having non-mevushal wine in many of these places, which is the problem is that if you have non-Jewish servants, non-Jewish service people, sorry, non-Jewish service people who when they serve the wine, non-mevushal wine that hasn't been previously cooked, would be a problem, and so they have to check for a lot of these issues. These things you want to check for. Yeah.
So you're saying in the restaurant the wine has to be mevushal?
I mean, in a good restaurant, it would absolutely be mevushal. Yeah. Yeah. Otherwise, I mean, the only way what they used to do, which they don't do it anymore, was they used to have the mashgiach constantly hold like they would under lock and key the non-mevushal wines for that day. And they stopped doing that because it just became annoying, basically, because you have to serve it, and then when you come and wash the dishes, if there's any wine left over, what if you serve it to somebody who wasn't Jewish, and you couldn't touch the glass while you're holding it, and they couldn't have this, all types of issues surrounded with non-mevushal wine. So it was better just to not have it at all. It was really just to have easier mevushal wine. So. So meat restaurants have a full-time mashgiach. If the full-time mashgiach is not there, I remember I used to go to Israel a lot under the supposedly what they would call mahadran hechshers, and they wouldn't have a full-time mashgiach. They would sometimes they'd be there, sometimes they wouldn't. Sometimes go run errands in the middle of the day. These were some of the quote-unquote mahadran places. In America, that's not the case. The good hashgachos, the good supervision companies always have a full-time mashgiach on the premises at all times, and you should be able to say hi to them if you're not sure. And if you're traveling somewhere, you should feel free to talk to the mashgiach. I always feel free to. Maybe it's just me. So the third one over here is bakery, vegetarian, or cafe needs minimal visitation. And for more often than not, if you're traveling around, so if you're traveling around, you should be able to find a lot of places under minimal supervision. A lot of times, sometimes it'll be like a JCC, or there'll be some bakeries that'll be kosher supervised. Those other places require minimal supervision. Pretty much any local rabbi, as long as they're relatively competent, should be able to handle that. I do stress relatively competent. There are people out there who are relatively incompetent, and that doesn't count. So they have to know what to look for. Especially when it comes to bakeries, if a person doesn't know what to look for, there could be issues. Obviously, a bakery uses a lot of different types of fats that they use in their baking process, and they need to make sure that these are appropriate fats. So, for example, you can't just assume that margarine is always parve. Margarine sometimes contains caseinates, or and so on. Sometimes margarine contains animal fat, non-kosher sources, because margarine is just a term for something that's not made from cow cream or anything else. So they need to be relatively confident to produce this stuff. Also, sometimes if they're not making fondant from scratch, fondant is simply made by a mixture of water, cornstarch, and sugar, or if they are even less of that, they're using confectionery sugar. They need to know if there's any stabilizers used. Often stabilizers can be non-kosher, and so those can be a problem. So same thing with cafes. Cafes, with minimal supervision for the most part, they should be able to see that there's an OU on a can of tuna fish, an OU or a Circle K on mayonnaise. That the bagels have kosher supervision on them and so on. So as long as those things are minimally supervised. Sometimes a cafe will order from a large distributor that will give them a lot of stuff. For example, there's a gigantic national distributor called Cisco, where they have a bunch of stuff that's kosher, and they have bagels, frozen bagels that they can use in these cafes, so on. So if the rabbi there basically knows what they're looking for, and and the stuff really doesn't require any cooking, it's perfectly fine. You can rely on people microwaving things like eggs. Your mother is here. Go ask mommy, please. So things like that, which don't really need to be things that can be prepared in a microwave, are often not a problem with Bishul Akum. This was something I learned years ago about microwaves. Microwaves is not considered. It's actually a very funny story that many places rely on a microwave to cook, let's say, eggs. For an egg sandwich, and there's no supervision on hand. Eggs are always a problem with Bishul Akum. It's mentioned explicitly in the Talmud and in the Shulchan Aruch, but microwaving them is not. And the reason why it's permitted in a microwave is because it's not in Roy Lalos HaShulchan Malachim. It's not fit to be served at a important person's table. Or as one rabbi put it, you wouldn't take your wife on a date. You would take your date there, but you wouldn't take your wife on a date there. So you would not. If you wanted to impress somebody, you wouldn't bring them to a place where they are serving microwave eggs, and so therefore that would be permitted. So that's the type of thing that's sort of a minimalist thing. Vegetarian places need supervision because of the problem of vinegars and oils and other such stuff. So that also needs decent supervision. Also, many things there, the vegetables could be a problem if they can't be eaten raw, like a sweet potato or something like that, or other things that can't be eaten raw. If they're cooked at all, then they need to have a mashgiach turn on the fire at least part of the way through the day. Some places rely on a pilot light that is lit for the entire day to make sure that the product produced is under some help of a Jewish person. So vegetarian restaurants require minimal supervision. Most places that I know do not allow vegetarian restaurants to operate without having a mashgiach to turn on the fires, at least nearby. Some places still do that. It's not the end of the world. Some places still do it. So just know that you may not technically understand all the intricacies of what I'm talking about. Just know that vegetarian restaurants sometimes have a mashgiach. Sometimes don't have a mashgiach on premises, but somebody's turning on the fires. There's a mashgiach going around town doing that. You have a question?
So you're saying that in a place that's vegetarian, they have to be there to make sure that they have to be the ones to turn on the ovens.
Right. Yeah. So the mashgiach will turn on, not the ovens always, but they may not have ovens, but stoves, because things like rice and things like that may need to be prepared. Or they'll do is have a mashgiach for part of the day, and so what they need to do is prepare the rice and things ahead of time. Or if there's any vegetables that they need to use that require checking, then they need to check them ahead of time as well. So that's part of it. So those are things that need to be done on a regular basis about the mashgiach. So if there's vegetables to be checked or things to be turned on, there's a mashgiach will be around to do that. Some places still rely on that. So the prevalence of those type of restaurants is few and far between around here. It's actually some still in New York. I know that there's a rabbi who goes around, certifies a bunch of vegetarian restaurants. He turns on the fires and checks the vegetables.
What's open on Shabbos, these places?
Oh,
They're not that.
that's so if they're owned by a non-Jewish owner, places like Dunkin' Donuts or Krispy Kreme, those other places that require minimal hashgacha can be open on Shabbos as long as the owner's not Jewish. If the owner is Jewish, There are some halachic issues that can be worked out, but that not the I don't think the large cautious organizations rely on that anymore. Back in the day, when it wasn't common to have a lot of kosher places, if there was one guy in town who was willing to be kosher, and he was Jewish, kept himself on Shabbos, generally the practice was that you could eat stuff from the bakery Monday through Friday, but you couldn't buy Sunday stuff because it's made on Shabbos. So things like that, or you had to wait sometimes. But since general practice was to prohibit all food on Sundays, that came in on Saturdays. It was produced on Saturdays. But what happened was eventually the move was to go to Jewish-owned bakeries that were not operating on Shabbos at all. Is there a permitted method to use to be operating on Shabbos? Yes, we have to have non-Jewish workers and non-Jewish bakers and a non-Jewish owner in order to do that. So that's just that's part of it. Let's see over here. All right. So any questions about kosher restaurants? Okay, that should be pretty straightforward. So yeah, just basically kosher restaurant. Always look for their kosher symbol on the wall. Make sure it's timely, dated, and valid. Valid is very important because I been to a lot of places before where it was invalid. Even under good supervision, if it's invalid, you should find out why. Invalid means the date's passed. Yeah. I should say expired, but I said invalid. Yes, that meant expired. Thank you. I just don't know what language I'm speaking.
Is it like every year?
So usually it's annually. Usually annual renewal. Some places like in Israel, it's 4 times a year, so like every 3 months. So it just depends on the renewal system. So that's part of it. What's also fun about Israel is they could be having a mashgiach strike. So that's another thing that could be fun to figure out. So the place could still be saying you're operating as kosher. The mashgiach is at home collecting a check, watching TV, or in the basement learning, or whatever it is he's doing. I think it happened twice when I was there, and that country goes on strike for everything. I don't understand how to get anything done in that country. I really don't. But anyway, it's like a European mindset. Sometimes I just don't get it. I don't get it. Like, we're going on strike. Oh, okay. So. And then somehow they find other people to go ahead and visit these places or whatever. Because there's a mashgiach strike and the certificate's up on the wall. I'm like, who's the mashgiach? Oh, he's over there. Like, but he's not the regular guy. No, the regular guy's on strike. The regular guy's on strike. Anyway, whatever. Not gonna stop it. Moving on. Okay. If there's another question about kosher restaurants, we'll move right along over there. Okay. Non-kosher restaurants. Okay, so I've dedicated most of the time to this because this is always the most difficult thing, especially if you live anywhere that's not Montgomery County or that's not Rockville, Potomac, where there's like 8 places to eat. If you live in Silver Spring, there's like 2 restaurants, and if you live in Washington D.C., there's 2 restaurants. And in Virginia, there's no restaurants, so nothing kosher. So the question is, what do you do? A lot of people just learn to cook, but we're not here to tell you to learn to cook. We're here to give you information that's actually useful and practical. So the first thing is, are you allowed to go into a non-kosher restaurant? The reason why I'm addressing this is because since it's always brought up as an issue, we're just going to discuss it. There's this guy named Morris Ian. So Morris Ian is a guy. No, he's not a guy. But it's a concept in halacha that you should not do permitted things that people would think is being done wrong. And one classic example of it is, for example, lighting on Hanukkah. Let's say you had, your house faced a couple different streets. You had windows opening to 2 different streets. Where should you light? Because you face 2 different streets, and people should see that you are lighting your Hanukkah candles, right? Good observant Jewish person would light Hanukkah candles. Any good Jewish person would light the Hanukkah candles. And so I would look to your house and I would say, oh, they have Hanukkah candles. But if you have 2 windows, on one side people walking by going, where are the Steins, Hanukkah candles? How could they not have Hanukkah candles? Everyone has Hanukkah candles, but the Steins don't have Hanukkah candles. So basically, the rabbis said because of this Morris Ian issue, you should light on both sides, right? So because someone might walk by and think you didn't like Hanukkah candles, light on both sides. Nowadays, we don't have this problem because there's not this expectation of lighting in the window like there was in Talmudic times. But the Morris Ian is still an issue. Also, for example, if people from Israel are visiting the United States temporarily and happen to be here for Yom Tov, So they don't have to keep, let's say, like 7 days for Pesach, or only 8 days for Sukkot, or only 1 day for Shavuot. But they can't decide to like throw a house party on the day after, the second day of Yom Tov, because they're basically going to be offending all their other Jewish neighbors who keep the 2 days. So I'll do work in the house. They can't start doing if it's let's say the second day of Pesach, they would be able to do permitted work on Chol Hamoed, which is another discussion, because they would people would think like they are violating Yom Tov. So even though it's perfectly permitted for them, they're not allowed to do it. So is there a problem? And the reason why there's this joke of Morris Ayin, it's also pronounced Marit Ayin, which means what people would see. But in sort of the Yiddishism is Morris Ayin, and Morris is the play on words like the name Morris Ayin. So we call it that as a joke. Just explaining the joke because not everybody got it. So is there a problem of being a non-kosher restaurant for permitted purpose? Can you go to McDonald's and use the bathroom? Without people thinking you're going there for a cheeseburger, right? Can you go to any place, right? Without people thinking you're going to be in violation of something else. So there's actually been a big debate about this. I've heard everything from no, you can't even go to use the restroom, to yeah, you can go in and buy whatever's permitted. So the reason why the debate goes on is because there's actually a debate amongst later decisors, basically going back several hundred years, as to whether or not one may apply the rule of Maris Ayin to things not mentioned in the Talmud, which is frankly a very interesting discussion, which we will not get into at this time. We can have a separate class on Maris Ayin. And what its halachic implications are, but we're going to take the lenient approach right now and say that there are not issues in going into a non-kosher place to get kosher items. Okay, and basically that means that you go, as you see over here, we're going through coffee house, salad bars, vegetarian restaurants and bars, and all those other things to kind of decide to understand what is permitted to do there that you could get that is permitted, because we're going to go with the lenient opinion that you can only things that were mentioned in the Talmud are actually prohibited. So we are going to look at kosher items at a non-kosher establishment. This is 2B right now. Let's start with coffee house. So the first link I have in there is one of the most important links to the entire Jewish people, which is kosherstarbucks.com. For without this, there would be many, many upset and disappointed Jewish people in the entire world. Quick story about Starbucks. One time I met with somebody here in Potomac, Maryland, at the Cabin John Starbucks, and it was about 8 o'clock in the morning, and this goes back, I want to say about 7 years. And we go to Starbucks, and hello, Starbucks was not open, and it was 3 hours past its opening time. And boy, were there a large number of very unhappy people. I'm trying to be as PC as possible about this. Very unhappy people outside of that Starbucks. What do you mean you're not open? So anyway, clearly it was very well understood by the entire world that a website like Kosher Starbucks is clearly absolutely necessary. And it's run by a couple of guys who really do it as a community service. They have a Facebook page. So you can interact with them, ask them questions about the products. They really do a good job of updating and keeping it updated. And if you click on the link, there's like there's a little box in the upper right hand corner of the page. I'm just going to screen share it here with you real quick. Where's screen share? Okay, so let me screen share with you real quick, and I'll show you Kosher Starbucks here real fast. And here, Kosher Starbucks. Okay, so there's a page here, Kosher Starbucks, and if you go to lists, and in the upper right-hand corner, it says choose your list. Okay, and I recommend that you set it for the certified kosher list. There's a couple there: certified kosher list, kosher by ingredients list, and the no utensils list. So basically, what's happening is that the kosher certified list is like the what I would call the most common usage of Starbucks. Kosher by ingredients is, as it says here, by Yitzhak Abadi of Lakewood, New Jersey. Rabbi Yitzhak Abadi is a Sephardic rabbi. He's very well respected. However, he uses a set of rules that, like, I know almost nobody follows his rules and guidelines in the United States of America. So he's a brilliant guy, but nobody uses that list. But they put it on here because they get a lot of people who use it, and I think they feel that to let people know that it's not true. No utensils list is based on, really strict. It says it on the bottom here, really stringent. It's based on the CRC and Star K advisements of keeping kosher, and so those that's what I'm looking for. Those standards are not necessarily the case. I don't follow those standards, mostly because, just really quickly, the issue that they have, the really stringent list, is based on the idea that you're washing the coffee carafes with the hot plate that was used to heat up, like, the tray sandwiches, and they get washed together in a sink with soap, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so their argument basically is that, well, you wouldn't do that in a home, and so therefore your expectation would be to have the same standards with the home. Right, I really wouldn't heat up tray food in my home and then wash the tray dishes with my coffee carafe. But as most people point out, it's a huge stringency, mostly because it's not like they're being cooked together in the water, right? If you had a cauldron and you threw these things into it and you cooked them together, you'd have a point. But here they're in a sink, so it's already a cliche, which we talked about in the Shabbos class. There's soap in there. The soap is something that's not tasty, and so the flavors that when it would mix would mix. What's what I'm looking for? Would get ruined in the mixture, and therefore wouldn't make them prohibited. So their argument is that, well, this is not optimally how you would operate, so therefore you should not regularly frequent a Starbucks where this is the case. So basically, the argument against it is that it's probably not even prohibited to begin with, and so you can't say it's not optimal because it's not even prohibited, and so and also the flavors, even if they did mix, it's probably no one wants to take, even the flavor of the coffee, they're very strict to make sure the coffee has good flavors in it. So anyway, everyone is more than welcome to follow that type of stuff. One thing that's only the coffee. If you take a look at 1A, and we're going to talk about the plain coffee. The other stuff in there, like the espresso, the macchiatos, the cappuccinos, that's actually, even according to the super strict guys, that's all fine because they don't wash the espresso, the macchiato. They don't wash the espresso machine where you make the macchiatos and the cappuccinos and other such things. The lattes are not made with the coffee carafes that are washed in the sinks. It's there separately. It's not cleaned out with everything else. Now the only thing is that the super strict people may also be strict on other things as well. But at the very least, when it comes to drinking the coffee, this would be the super strict one. So people who are following super strict level espresso, macchiato, and all that stuff would technically be better. However, this issue is generally not a problem. You can actually get coffee pretty much anywhere as long as it's regular unflavored coffee or decaf unflavored coffee. These items don't require a special texture. And by plain unflavored coffee, it basically means that it doesn't matter where the beans come from, because the beans are just regional, and their flavor is affected by the amount of the roast, and also by the acidity level in the ground. And I'm not going to give you a whole schmooze on coffee and so on and so forth, but they have different acidity levels and other things that affect it, and the levels of the roast, and the quality of the grind, and so on. Just know that for the most part, that plain coffee is perfectly fine pretty much anywhere. So even if you go to a regular restaurant, you can pretty much get plain coffee, regular decaf. Even McDonald's. You might as well take the coffee import straight into the toilet, because if you're going to McDonald's. Actually, I don't know. I heard that McDonald's coffee is actually one of the most popular coffees in the United States. Like the rankings are like McDonald's and Dunkin' Donuts and then Starbucks, and yeah, which and I've never had a McDonald's coffee because I can't think of the last time I've actually anywhere near. There's a McDonald's here, but why would I go there? There's Starbucks. So, and I'm a coffee snob, clearly. So, the McDonald's coffee is disgusting. Okay, thank you for confirming that. Appreciate that. I'm gonna get in trouble on YouTube now because I just said McDonald's coffee is disgusting. So, yeah, yeah, I guess so. So, okay, moving right along over here. Sweeteners and flavors need a hechsher. I'm sorry, B. B1B, B1 little b. Milk, steamed or cold, half and half, and cream. Those are all fine. You don't need to worry about certifications for that. That's all fine. They use dedicated equipment for the milk, and so as long as you're relying on regular milk being kosher. If you're into the Chalav Yisrael thing, which we won't talk about right now, but if you're into like milk being supervised and watched by Jews in this milking process, which is called Chalav Yisrael, then this wouldn't work. So for many Sephardic people, this is an issue because many Sephardim are mocked on, particular on Chalav Yisrael, as are many people who are sort of in the right-wing Ashkenazi world as well. But good segments of the Jewish world, Chalav Yisrael is not an important thing, so milk is perfectly fine. And half is just half milk, half cream, and then there's whole cream, and then there's full-fledged cream. And if you have it doesn't matter if it's the shelf-stable half and half or regular half and half. Those are generally okay. It's preferable to make sure the shelf-stable half and halves that you see, like mini moos, have an OUD on them. It's preferable to get those because they might have some stabilizers in them to keep them shelf-stable. But fresh cream, fresh half and half, don't need to worry about them having a good symbol on them because they are really not. There's nothing else added to them to keep them stable. So, like they're not going to add. Sometimes just gelatin is used as a stabilizer to keep things from breaking down, especially like in low-fat yogurts. But it's not used in half and half. Which otherwise, like low-fat yogurt needs a hechsher. All yogurts need a hechsher because they often use gelatin as a stabilizer. Kosher yogurts use the stuff from seaweed called agar-agar, or there's something called carrageenan stabilizer. That's just sidebar. Yeah, question.
So does frozen yogurt have the gelatin?
Frozen yogurt may not, but you need a hechsher on anyway because there's all types of weird stuff in frozen yogurt. All types of anything comes in a carton, except for like milk.
So the frozen yogurt stores,
you have to look for a hechsher.
Like the one that's kosher is Rockwell Thompson.
I'm saying you just have to look for a hechsher on the cartons that they use. And I wanted to say cartons, so I got in trouble one time. I have to look at the containers to make sure that there's a hechsher on it. I'll probably get a joke later. Where are we? Okay, sweeteners and flavors need a hechsher. Sweeteners, so artificial sweeteners and so on, for the most part are kosher, like things like Equal and what's the other one called? Sweet and Low. And some brands of Sevia are kosher. These need to be hechsher because of their processes require them to be fine. But things like sugar are fine even without a hechsher. Flavors, especially in places like Starbucks, the syrups are all kosher. If you're somewhere that's not a regular Starbucks, you can just ask to see the syrup container. There's several different brands out there. One has a Chaf K, one has an OU, one has a Circle K. Those are all fine. And sometimes on the bars, they have these little shakers. You can check the Kosher Starbucks app or just find out where they get it from. There's like vanilla sugar, vanilla sugar, cocoa. Plain cocoa doesn't need a hechsher, but chocolate powder does because it's a processed chocolate. There's added sugars in it, and after it's been processed, it needs to have a hechsher on it. But if they have like cocoa niblets, those don't need a hechsher on it because those are straight up cocoa. But that's pretty much all you would find. Cinnamon also doesn't need a hechsher on it because cinnamon straight up is perfectly fine. Okay. Any questions about coffee? No. It's the most. That's why I put it first. Covered it while everybody's still awake.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's coffee. All right. No, 2 is non-kosher cafe or grocery salad bar. So these places are pretty simple. Basically, but they have a few other things in them. They don't really cook a whole lot there for the most part. Some of them don't even have. So just so everybody understands, the reason I put the second is because when you cook stuff in this is Montgomery County, Maryland, and many jurisdictions, you have to have a hood and you have to have grease traps and you have to have spend 100 grand basically to be able to cook stuff under health department rules, because you have to properly dispose of the grease, properly manage the steam that rises off of your stuff, and clean the air and so on and so forth from cooking, so you don't stain the whole world with your grease fires, and you don't pour your grease into the regular system. And so, because you're doing so much traffic, they control the amount that you put out there into the water system and the sewage system, the grease. So these things are all monitored. So that's why I've sort of broken it up this way. So the first few places are going to really don't cook a whole lot, but you still have issues to worry about. So in a non-kosher cafe or grocery salad bar, coffee and tea, even in a regular cup, meaning like it's a regular, whatever the regular china is, you can order coffee and tea in these places for the most part, because these utensils are dedicated, and even if they are not, even if they're washed in a dishwasher with other stuff, yeah, I'm saying even if they were, it may not be. They use detergent in there, and so it's fairly innocuous. You could go ahead and rely on the fact that they're not used hot, except as a cliche for coffee and tea, which are pretty much kosher. Even if it's used for a flavored coffee, you shouldn't drink it, but you don't, again, unless you know for a fact that it's really not kosher. For example, like if they sell civet coffee. Civet coffee comes from a cat. It's from these coffee beans that are consumed and excreted by the civet cat in India. In India? I'm not gonna look it up. I think that's where it's from. Himalayan cat called the civet cat, and they make coffee out of it. It's supposed to be wonderful and delicious. And I have never had it and never plan on it. But that would be not kosher because it's excreted by a cat, and yes, it's actually literally excreted by it. Moving on. So, but regular tea are fine. Tea bags, just make sure they have the kosher symbol on them. Herbal teas generally don't need a hechsher. And when I say generally, it means that it's actually just the herb itself. It's just peppermint. Sometimes it's peppermint with some other stuff in there. So you need to just check to make sure that it's not infused with anything else. The straight up herbal teas, if it's straight up air dried stuff, it's fine. A lot of times it's mixed with other things. Straight up green tea is fine. Straight up orange pico tea is fine. Straight up oolong tea, straight up anything, if there's no other flavors to it, are all fine. So if you're not sure, you can always ask me. But green, white, oolong, and all other things are just terms for the quality of Chinese teas. So if they're just straight up, then they're okay. But if there's any flavors added to them, which you'll generally see in the ingredients list, they'll need the certification on them, because they've been basically tampered with, and they have a lot of weird flavors that they use. Let's see. So, and if it's in a disposable cup bottle, it's not a problem. Okay. In many of these cafes, you're going to have problems with salad, cheese, and bread. We're in 2B now, under section B. So salad, the problem is, of course, the infestation of the lettuce itself. Also, if they're cutting non-kosher things and they cut the lettuce with non-kosher knives, would also be a problem. So those are two issues. If they're getting it out of a bag, then you could rely on that. But at the same time, like if you're in a grocery store, you might as well get a salad bag. That'd be better than getting it from the salad bar. In fact, because it actually would end up being cheaper than buying it from the salad bar based on the prices. Like, you have to pay like $10 a pound to get from the salad bar. To buy a bag, it's like $3.50. Anyway, you can have more control over it. And the salad dressings also need to make sure are kosher. Other things there too, croutons, other things have to make sure they're kosher. Now, a cafe versus a grocery store, when they're cutting stuff up, they're cutting up cucumbers, they're cutting up tomatoes, they're cutting up other fine fruits and vegetables to put into your salad. If it's the type of place that has, so you need to just, you might want to just verify, probably very easy, to find out that they prepare all of the fruits and vegetables in the produce section, and they often do, because many places follow HACCP guidelines, and HACCP guidelines are basically that they have to keep their fresh fruits and vegetables away from all the raw meat and other nasty stuff. So generally those things are prepared independently and have dedicated equipment. So that's a quick question you could ask, and you say, hey, my favorite excuse is to tell everybody that you're vegan. hey, I'm vegan, and I also make sure that your fruits and vegetables haven't smelled a piece of meat ever in their entire existence. And people are pretty cool with you asking that question. If you start talking about kosher, they're gonna look at you like, what are you talking about? But vegan, they seem to understand. So you can use that as an excuse to ask that question.
They don't use kosher stuff.
They don't use what?
Kosher is like
No, but if they're using if it's dedicated just for vegetables, then it's okay. Hmm? I don't know. I don't know. I know that I don't know about the individual places. I do know that all of these. I do know that all the places around here, if they follow the proper guidelines, they have to have dedicated knives and equipment and tables and areas for their fresh fruits and vegetables because of cross contamination. That's why I don't shop at what I like to call these like non-big chain supermarkets, like independent supermarkets, because I'm always concerned that they fudge the rules when they. So you can, number one, it cannot be kosher. Number two, you get super sick. Like if they are bringing over knives from the preparation area to cut their fruits and vegetables, yeah, you can get that's Listeria, Ebola, Salmonella. But I'm not going to go into all that. So if you're working with a reputable place, you can rely on the fact that you're going to have dedicated equipment, and so like dedicated salad equipment, salad knives, salad forks, salad this, salad that. So you can go ahead like buy cut watermelons in the grocery store, for example, because they have dedicated equipment for it. Even if they didn't, cutting watermelons is a separate permission, which is that when you cut them super hard with a knife, and you do multiples of them, it's probably clean. So arguably, if it did take it from the non-kosher section, if it cut like 8 bazillion watermelons, you can rely on that fact. But more likely than not, like you can be 99% sure they're not bringing it back and forth. In the grocery store, for sure, getting like the cut fruit and the cut vegetables and stuff would be fine. Again, things like celery sticks would be fine. The carrots wouldn't matter because the baby carrots are peeled by a machine anyway. Um, but those type of things generally wouldn't be a problem. So once you're able to, if you can check your salad, by hand or check like a handful of the cut bag salad, which would suffice. Then you can go ahead and have that and get some other stuff from the salad bar because you're hungry. That's good. But to use on a regular basis, I wouldn't rely on it. So the next thing that's a problem is cheese. Cheese needs to have a kosher symbol on it. 10 times out of 10, they're not using kosher cheese in these establishments, so I wouldn't even consider it. And don't let people tell you that cheese is kosher. If it's not in a sealed container with a good kosher symbol on it. Good kosher symbols mean like OU, star K, Puff K, circle K. There's this one that looks like 2 tablets with a K inside of it. That's on Cabot cheese. It's no good. I think we talked about that last time. That cheese is not kosher. Yeah. So then bread also needs a kosher supervision. So those are things that you can verify at these different places. Okay, so let's see, non-kosher cafe. So I also brought up in the grocery salad bar. So things they're cooking in the back are not going to be kosher 10 times out of 10. But let's say they make things like tuna fish salad, for example. So tuna fish may have other non-kosher ingredients in it. So tuna fish isn't just tuna and mayonnaise, unless you go to I'm not going to say. There's some places where all is tuna and mayonnaise, and if that's all they're giving you, then you really should just buy that stuff yourself. And actually, just buy honestly, you're better off going to buy like a bag of Starkist or Bumblebee tuna, where it's the waterless one, just ripping it open and getting like a package of mayonnaise from the grocery bar, and they have it there, and just mixing it yourself. Because otherwise they're charging you a premium to do nothing. Usually when they make tuna fish at places, they're adding breadcrumbs, they're adding relishes, they're adding other flavors to it. So those are just considerations to have. That tuna fish isn't just a simple mixture. 9 times out of 10 they're adding breadcrumbs to it because breadcrumbs are cheap. They add weight, they keep you more full, and the breadcrumbs need to have a kosher symbol on it, and also could be adding other flavors to it as well. But if you can find out what they're using, like if you know how they're really just making tuna and mayonnaise, and those 2 things are easily verifiable. Or you can verify what they're putting in. If it's just tuna, mayonnaise, and relish, and you can verify those 3 ingredients are kosher mixed in a bowl where it's cold, so you can rely on that. if you're stuck, but I wouldn't rely on it on a regular basis. Again, it requires a lot of asking questions. So if you're kind of a bashful person, I wouldn't rely on it. So you have to ask some questions about stuff. Any questions about Kosher Cafe or the grocery salad bar? Yeah, Rob, go ahead. Oh, I guess you have a question?
In a non-kosher, yes, in a non-kosher cafe or a grocery store, how do you ask the questions without being obnoxious?
How do you ask the question without being obnoxious? I mean, you could say. I mean, you could just say, I didn't see. I don't see a nutrition information sign up over here. Do you mind telling me what's in here? I'm worried about my salt intake. You can come with any excuse. I want to know my salt intake or how much fat is in. Like, do you use full fat mayonnaise? Like, just tell me what you put in. Do you mind telling me what you put into the tuna fish?
Well, I have to admit, I'm not interested in standing for 20 minutes at the salad bar trying to discover or ask questions. Excuse me, what is in this? What utensils are used with this? Are they dedicated? That just does not sound good.
Right. You can rely on the utensils being dedicated in regular for vegetables. You can rely on them being dedicated. But with the tuna fish and stuff like that, or salmon salad, that you shouldn't assume is using all kosher ingredients. In a small place, like a small cafe, where they're just making the place is maybe 1,000 square feet, so it's like you basically you walk in, you can see all the way to the back of the place. There's a door back there. It's all right in front of you. That type of place is what I'm saying. You could ask in a place like that, just trying to have it naked. Sometimes they'll get there used to be this brand like Sally Sherman tuna, which is pre-made kosher tuna fish. I don't know if it still exists or not. I haven't seen it in years. But there used to be a lot of those types of salads that were commercially available that many places used. So, like, for example, we're talking before about frozen yogurt. Everybody uses almost the same frozen yogurt base. So, like, 9 out of 10 frozen yogurt places are kosher. Baskin Robbins, all their ice cream made under supervision. So you walk in and there's a little sign that says, "Oh yeah, all the Baskin Robbins flavors are all kosher except for what is it now? I think there's like the ones with the marshmallows in it and rum raisin. But Rocky Road and rum raisin, like the only ones that are not kosher now. So yeah, you don't have to feel obligated to have to ask a lot of questions. I'm just sort of if you are stuck, my best suggestion is actually just to get a package of the Bumblebee or the Starkist. Grab a packet of mayonnaise, which is probably Hellman's mayonnaise. We'll see a big OU on a little package of it, which would be free, and then just mix it yourself with also the free utensils at the salad bar. So those are options. Buy a bag of salad, just check it yourself. And there you go, bam, you got one. Okay, let's move ahead over here. Let's go to number 3, sushi and vegetarian restaurants. So sushi restaurants and vegetarian restaurants, just as we kind of mentioned briefly earlier, these places, again, there's not a whole lot of cooking going on at sushi places. Unless they're doing tempura. Tempura is usually fried in a little fryer. They don't necessarily have complicated cooking equipment for that. But there are some issues in sushi and vegetarian restaurants. Vegetarian restaurants, there's infestation issues with the vegetables. So things like cabbage and stuff like that could have issues. Sushi has also had issues of infestation. So if it's fresh sushi, for example, could be an issue of infestation of other little creatures in the sea, which also includes seahorses. Seahorses are an infestation of seaweed. We may not think of it like that because we don't live in seaweed, but seahorses do. And sometimes they get caught up in the seaweed manufacture, and it's really sad. So save the seahorse and buy kosher seaweed. That sounds like a really great ad for like PETA or something like that. Let's see. Question about the ice cream. Even if ice creams are kosher, what if they use the scoop and non-kosher flavors? Yes, rinsing the scoop is enough in that case. They have to wash the scoop in between every time, and there's running water by law. It's funny when they used to not have running water by law. anybody remembers that. It was just like this murky water that they kept sticking the ice cream scoop in. But now they have to have running water in there. So I don't know if anybody ever noticed that. I remember back in the day when it wasn't running water in the ice cream scoop cleaner. It was just water. The water's always gross. It's like 80 different flavors of ice cream. But now they have to have running water in there, so that suffices. So with sushi, that's one of the issues. The other issue with sushi specifically is fresh fish may not be so fresh, and they often soak it in brine. Generally, what happens is that they, in order to keep, where was I? That was pretty funny. So oh, I lost my place. The fish is often soaked in brine. Brine is often just salt and water. Sometimes a little bit of vinegar is added to it, but really the problem is the fact that they soak it in brine with other stuff. So you may have a kosher fish. Brine is considered sharp. It doesn't need to be soaked overnight to transfer flavors. It only needs 18 minutes. So if they leave it in there all day, so there can be the salmon in there, and the tuna in there, and the eel, and the octopus, and whatever else they put in these crazy sushi things, and the blowfish or whatever that meant. Brine. There's some other things, but they soak it. They often soak it in brine to keep it fresh throughout the day, and so as a result, you're going to have non-kosher fish flavor in your fish. So even though it's a kosher fish, they don't always keep it super fresh, where it's like never going to contact anything else. So that's another issue. Vinegars, cheap butter, and margarine are other issues in many of these restaurants. These are more problem in vegetarian restaurants. Vinegars, balsamic vinegar needs a kosher symbol because it's made from crushed grapes, and crushed grapes, as soon as the liquid starts to drip out, is a problem of stam yinam, of a problem of non-Jews coming in contact with the wine. And so it's often made from the dregs of the leftover dregs of wine production, and so it needs to be kosher certified. Other vinegars are a problem in their production. Things like white vinegar and red vinegar also need to be kosher supervised because in production they often get mixed with the other types of vinegars. Cheap butter. Okay, so this is a really funny thing. I don't know if anybody knew this or not. So butter used to always be assumed to be a straight up kosher product. Why? Because butter comes from cows, and cows produce milk. Milk is kosher. Cream is kosher, right? No problem with it. Okay, and in fact, butter is for many isn't even a problem in Paul Israel. Now, what they eventually started to do, because industry leaders are brilliant in saving everything, is they started making milk, making butter from leftover whey production of cheese. So they were able to boil it down and make really cheap, nasty butter from whey, reclaimed whey. And this is not, and so these rely on the fact that we call butter, grade AA butter. This is made straight from cream. But there are some cheap butters out there that are making reclaimed whey from cheese production. Reclaimed whey from cheese production can be made by cooking the cheese until the whey comes out, and that would render the whey unkosher. Straight up whey actually is not unkosher, even from non-kosher cheese production. But because often the whey is produced, let nothing go to waste, so they cook it, so that the whey then gets infused with the flavor of non-kosher cheese. So that could be a problem. And margarine could also contain non-kosher ingredients like animal fats in it. Or other animal ingredients that could pose a problem. So margarine needs to have a kosher symbol on it. Okay, so those are the issues in the sushi places. So that's a big issue. Okay, if there's no other questions over there, we'll jump to number 4 over here. Moving right along. Okay, full-service restaurants and bars. Okay, so the reason why this is a problem is, if you look at A, is have you ever worked in a restaurant kitchen? The reason I wrote it like that is because if you've ever worked in a restaurant kitchen, you will know that there's just stuff. It is, even though there's a line, it's just nuts. Everyone's under stress. They're grabbing whatever they can that they can find. Stuff is flying everywhere, and so it's almost impossible to assume that even vegetables are cut with a dedicated clean knife. and that's part of the issue. And so, if you look at BIA, quote, HACCP and separating fish, that's not enough because, frankly, since they're cooking everything, they don't necessarily have to follow HACCP. And HACCP are guidelines. HACCP is federal guidelines for food safety. If the local jurisdiction doesn't follow it, as long as they may say that as long as everything is cooked to a certain temperature, it's fine. But if you cut, let's say someone went and started cutting their pork with a knife, and they hook it over to the fish, and they cut the fish with it. As soon as you cook it, the fats from the pork are going to get absorbed, at least a kidney klipa, maybe a kidney natila, depending on how you roast it and how fatty it is, into the fish. It's going to get absorbed to at least millimeter depth to as much as half an inch depth, depending on the process that's put in for cooking, and not being washed off. So you basically pay for a fish that have to cut off the cut end because of where the cut was made. That part of it. Those types of things are a problem. So to rely on that, and the other problem is that where they're going to cook it on. Arguably, if they were to take a couple pieces of aluminum foil and wrap it around the salmon or a tuna steak and then cook it, you'd have to be able to recognize that it's that. So, for example, how do you know that it's a tuna steak? Tuna and red meat on shark look exactly the same. So you'd have to be able to verify one over the other. And if you get tuna already grilled, you wouldn't know it's actually tuna. The exception would be things like red halibut and salmon, where only kosher fish, the only kosher fish in the whole sea are that salmon color, or salmon and red halibut. You could rely on the colors for that, but again, how are they preparing it? So if they were to, let's say, grill it, they're not grilling it on a clean grill or a dedicated fish grill. They're just putting it on a grill, so you're going to have non-kosher flavors that go into your fish. And so they would, in order for it to work properly, you would have to have, even if it was quote unquote double wrapped, may or may not be enough. You'd probably have to have it baked in an oven and not put on a grill, just because of the fact that flavor transfers would transfer right through your aluminum foil. There are people who used to feel that, 2 layers of aluminum foil should be enough to prevent the flavors from getting through to the fish. But many people have argued on that, based on the fact that some flavor transfers can go in deeper than the depth of the thin aluminum foil. So putting aluminum foil in between doesn't necessarily prevent flavors from diffusing across several layers of aluminum foil, especially since many of these grills are dirty. And you have the same problem when flavors diffusing across several layers of aluminum foil in a pan or in a pot if you were to, let's say, poach it. So if you were stuck somewhere, maybe baking salmon would work, but for the most part, just not going to cut it. Your best bet, like you can see over here, is probably fresh cut fruit. Probably the only thing you get in many of these places because salads are often cut and made where they put meat on top of it, so they're going to cut up the salad with non-kosher utensils. But fruit often will just sort of be like over in a corner, not bothering anybody. So fresh cut fruit may be fine, especially if it's in a separate cup, like a pickup thing, like you would get a separate fruit cup, would be fine. Beverages are acceptable, and by beverages we mean recognized brands like Coke and Pepsi that we know are all kosher, and their affiliates: Sprite, 7-Up, Dr. Pepper.
Beer.
We'll get to that. So all those beverages are okay. You can also get them in their glasses, which is also acceptable because it's a one-time thing, and it's always served cold and so on. So let's say you were able to let's say you want to use their fork and their knife to eat your fruit cup. Then you could use their utensils, use their fork and their knife to cut up your fruit or your melon or whatever it is. Because they're for one-time use. So this is like you're at a business meeting and you want to show that you're eating something, so you order yourself hot tea and some fruit, which would be totally absurd necessarily. You might be hungry afterwards. So, basically, you can use the utensils cold for one-time use. It's not a problem. In F over here, beer and liquor. This is complicated. I'm just going to tell you that you should use the list. I provide a nice list of all these different beers and liqueurs for everyone's reference. Those who know me know that I'm an absolute expert at these things. I almost never need to look at them again because I've been through them so many times. That's entirely possible. But you can possibly minimize them. This is a good question over here. Would wood planks be enough of a separation? Cooking the fish on wood planks. If I'm not familiar with if they just dedicated wood planks. Do they dedicate wood planks to fish? I don't think that. It depends, right? Right. So they can also put like non-kosher fish on it too, or meat, right? Don't put meat on it. The wood planks are always for fish. Okay. So yeah, you can find out if it's dedicated. I mean, you could rely on them to say, for a one-time thing, not on a regular basis. But if you're stuck somewhere and they're going to put on wood plank would be better than aluminum foil, definitely. That would actually be fine because it's dedicated to the salmon. You would be okay. But again, it's not preferable because salmon technically, the reason why you could be lenient on cooked salmon is because people tend to eat it raw. But again, we're relying on a leniency, not a leniency, which is that if you're at this meeting and you're hungry and you have nothing else to eat, technically you would want Bishul Yisrael on salmon. You want a Jewish person handling and cooking your salmon. But for the most part, since if you're hungry, you can rely on the opinions that sometimes salmon is often eaten raw, and if this type of salmon that you're eating at the restaurant isn't necessarily salmon isn't the quality of salmon they would sell that we fit the kings. This would be like farm-raised salmon, opposed to the wild Alaskan salmon they would want to sell, a king salmon, whereas they would serve it at a regular meal. So those are some leniencies to rely on. So that would be possible. Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah.
So if I go to like a cafeteria and they have like packaged sushi items and it has salmon, I can buy that?
No. Sushi always has a problem. The nori can be a problem. The what's called could be a problem. The rice could be a problem. And the salmon got to be soaked in brine. So the sushi would have to have a hechsher. We were talking about straight up salmon. Now, if you want to eat straight up raw salmon, that would be cool. No, it's disgusting. But wasabi straight up right. So that would actually be if you don't soak it in brine and you got just the idea right now is making kind of ill. But if you ordered raw salmon with wasabi powder, you have to make sure that they're making either the wasabi has a kosher symbol on it, or they're making it from straight up wasabi powder. Because not everybody does that. Sometimes it's like fake mustard wasabi. So if they use actual, it would be the wasabi is a paste and not like a squirty thing. And to make sure that's authentic wasabi powder, that would actually be fine. So yeah, in theory, if I can hold down the gag reflex, I probably would eat that. Yeah. In theory, that would make sense. I should point out that like smoked salmon would not be a problem. So if you could find, but you want to get it with a hechsher on it because oftentimes smokehouses use both kosher and non-kosher. So if they have locks available, you can just find out, there's a kosher symbol on the locks. Let's see 1 second over here. Just getting a little late when I kind of get to the end over here. Okay, so this is really just for work-related meetings, etc. For one-time use. It's not meant for regular use. You should try to have things that are prepared in kosher kitchens. So I'm only giving you examples of places like if you're going to them because like for example, not all beers are available in stores. So the only way to get certain types of beers is by going to a draft place, and you want to order that beer, or you just like it better when it comes out of draft. So like, for example, Stella Artois is 10 times better out of draft than it is out of the bottle. And if you don't believe me, just order it. So, or Sam Adams. Other things are better at draft than they are.
Are they kosher?
Yes. Sam Adams, all flavors Sam Adams are kosher under the Star K.
Stella's my favorite.
Yeah, and Stella's also fine. But if you look at the liquor list, you'll see. And I could literally give a class for 3 hours on how to use the liquor list. So just like use them sparingly. and use them well. If you're still confused with it, just let me know. But like the liquor lists are refer to them. But this is usage meant for not for regular use. It's preferable, unless if you're coming from home, or it's not if you're coming from home. If you're traveling, you're in a business meeting or anything else like this, not order out. Things that you could order out regularly, like ice cream. Now, honestly, you could, like ice cream, like a Baskin Robbins, but even if you go to a non-kosher restaurant and they have like Blue Ribbon ice cream or Breyer's ice cream, you could order ice cream there. There's no reason not to. It's going to be cold, served cold, and whatever. So that type of thing. It's also that you can get whipped cream on it, like 10 out of 10 whipped creams in the can are kosher. So that wouldn't be a problem. That's full service restaurant. Any other questions about the full service restaurants? Okay. Okay, let's go to hotels and motels, and then I'll explain the apps at the bottom. Okay, so hotels and motels and other lodging, they have some fun stuff in there that they may offer you, like continental breakfast. So the packaged cereals and milk are fine. Packaged cereals means you can see there's a Hechsher on them. They usually come in a little pre-packed, thingy. You open it up, you pour the milk in, it comes with a spoon. That's fine. Things like bagels and muffins. Make sure that it's from a kosher provider. You can probably ask them to give it to you in the package, if it's that, or you can call up and ask. If you I know Rob's not going to do this because he doesn't like to ask a lot of questions, but but if you feel like being obnoxious and asking a lot of questions, like me, then you can go down there and see if the bagels are from a kosher provider, or if the muffins are from a kosher provider. There's things like Otis Spunkmeyer and things like that, which are kosher. I still get a kick out of the fact that I ran the Army 10 miler, and they had like 8,000 Otis Spunkmeyer muffins and things for recovery afterwards. It was one of the funniest recovery foods I've ever seen in my entire life. But hey, kudos to the United States Army for providing us with 8 tons of cookies and muffins after running 10 miles. So,
Bye.
Yeah.
I assure you, I'll ask questions. I don't have a problem being obnoxious.
All right. Ask for your forgiveness, then.
Afterwards, always, sir. Never ask for permission. You always ask for forgiveness.
Okay. See over here, bulk cereal. You rely on recognition, meaning I wrote like that's a Cheerio. So if you see like they have a lot of times these places have bulk bins. It's not as common as it once used to be, obviously because of hepatitis issues. Bulk bins have kind of disappeared. People kind of like ew. But if you still go to a place to have bulk bins for your cereal, if you can kind of recognize. Back to bar and diner food. Yeah, basket of fries and onion rings are off limits because they're fried like in a fryer. That's like, I'm for sure has had non-kosher nuggets and other stuff in it. Because the fryer is shared with everything non-kosher. So even like if you ever go to Max's or one of these places where the fryer is used for chicken nuggets, you'd have to wait 6 hours because it was just between milk and meat, because the fryer is used for both chicken nuggets and then onion rings and cooking them all together in the same oil. So you really should be particular about waiting. Although Sparta Custom wouldn't require you to wait 6 hours. Ashkenazi Custom might. And even still, you might get away with it. For sure, actually, Sparta wouldn't have to wait. But anyway, in a regular bar and diner, definitely trade. Bulk cereal, yeah. So if it looks like Frosted Flakes, if it looks like Cheerios, if it looks like you can rely on that. There's an event though where General Mills sponsored breakfast at the conference, and they had boxes of Cheerios. So that was easy. Just a box of Cheerio so anyway, that was that. Okay, let's see. The other thing is the microwave and the coffee machine. The microwave is a simple way to kosher the microwave, which is to take a cup of water, fill it up halfway. You can use the cups provided in the room for coffee. Make sure the microwave is clean. Generally, it will be because the staff make sure it's pretty clean. Just boil out the water in the cup till the steam fills up. It takes about 4 or 5 minutes to boil out the water. And then boom, you have your own kosher microwave. You can use it for anything. You can also use microwave-safe bags if you want to, if you don't feel like koshering it or you're not there long enough. Coffee machines, some people are concerned that people may be putting non-kosher soup into the carafe. I mean, maybe they do, maybe they don't. I'm going to, number one, it may not have been used in the past 24 hours for non-kosher soup. There may not have been soup in there. Even if there was soup in there, I'm pretty sure that ramen noodle soup into coffee is no gum. It doesn't taste good, and so you have enough reasons to be lenient and rely on that. The kosher in there. If they have if they have a kitchen, and those just things you kosher them like you would kosher other things. Make sure it's perfectly clean. Turn it all the way up. For about an hour for the oven at 500. Things like that. Any questions quickly about hotels and motels? Okay. All right, so let's wrap it up over here real quick. The last couple things over here is in section 3, apps for making life easier. CRC has some really good apps in this bottom page over here. Yes, a CRC app. Yeah, I didn't recognize it was on the iPhone.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great app. It tells you everything you need about Slurpees, about Starbucks, has videos for kosher. It has lists of food products that may or may not need a kosher symbol on them. It's a great reference tool. And actually, the reason why I recommend it to everybody is because it means one less time that people have to send me a text message to say, is this thing kosher? So the world has become a better place because these guys put this stuff out there. And it's much more accessible. The OU Kosher app is also pretty good, although that's really just for finding out if a certain product is kosher or not. It has some information in it, though, that's really useful. So I recommend that. StarK has one now, too, for Passover. If you go to the StarK page, you can download their StarK app. In 3C over here, there's Kosher Restaurants GPS or godavin.com. So we just want to, if you want to find where the nearest Jewish community is, and their kosher restaurants. So Kosher Restaurants GPS is actually a really cool service. So you can, if you have a GPS, you can use that. Godavin.com is just a place to find out where the local synagogues are when you're traveling. And if you just want the overall database of kosher stuff wherever you go, the Kosher.com travel page has a way of having it listed all the kosher restaurants in an area. And even different countries, too. When you travel to Europe, you need to know where you find kosher food by using their lists. They literally have lists of kosher stuff, but now they have a searchable database. And so that's a really, really good tool for when you're traveling to know what you can get that's kosher. The last thing over here is the symbol database, which is the CRC app has a symbol database, but KosherQuest.org has a symbol database as well. Sometimes they have the same one, sometimes they don't. Also a very good resource. And with that, we're just going to wrap up this evening by saying that these are all some tools that you can have for things to do while out. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask them. I'm just going to stop the broadcast here. Thank you everyone for coming out this evening. And just so you know,